So, that light's right in my eyes. So, one of the things that I love about living here in Calgary is the 4 very distinct seasons. Sometimes all in one day. But there's no mistaking, just as Reverend Marjorie talked about, there's no mistaking that fall is happening all around us. The leaves are changing colors, so beautiful. There's that slight little nip in the air, although I understand it's supposed to warm up again. Yeah. And the appearance of pumpkin spice and maple flavored everything, right? And I don't know about you all, but fall is my favorite season. Yes? Yeah, a few people? Okay. I'm talking to the choir here. You guys like summer, don't you? Yeah. Okay, well, even when I lived in San Diego, fall was still my favorite season, even though the seasons are pretty darn subtle. In fact, I found this on Facebook today. The last day of summer, the first day of fall, the first day of winter, the first day of spring pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? Now, I know that a lot of people consider spring to be the season of newness, right? That's when everything's coming back to life and stuff. But for me, the season of newness is fall. Because I love the cooler weather. Not like really cold weather, but I love the cooler weather. Don't like the heat. I love that it's the start of school. Did I mention we have a class starting on Tuesday? Did I mention that? Okay. It's the beginning of NFL football. That's exciting. It's coming, it's fall. The holidays are starting to come up. So for me, the advent of the leaves changing and the temperatures dropping makes me happy. Can you tell? I'm just happy. I'm just happy that fall is here. And once again, what's so beautiful about this is that we can look to nature. We can look to beautiful Mother Nature to show us the ease with which she handles change. Something that many of us humans have a little bit of a challenge with. Would you agree? When it comes time for the seasons to change, Mother Nature doesn't whine and complain that things are changing and they're never going to be the same. In her infinite wisdom, she understands that change is absolutely natural. It is absolutely normal. And it ultimately allows for more growth and more expansion. Because if you think about it, if the leaves didn't turn and then eventually drop in the autumn, and the trees didn't go dormant during the winter, because during the winter they're not dead, they're growing their roots down into where it isn't frozen, they're growing down like that. And that brings this new growth that happens in the springtime, which then brings this bountiful greenness that we enjoy in the summer. So as humans, we watch this and we're like, oh yeah, that's cool, I get it. The cycle of seasons, cycle of nature. We adapt to it. We put our jackets on when it gets cooler. We put our flip-flops on when it gets warmer. But what we don't do is have the same adaptability and the same flexibility when it comes to change in our lives. Am I right? I mean, how come we, and I am including myself in this, please know this, how come we see change as being threatening and disruptive? How come we fight it with all of our might? How come we hold on to things that are no longer serving us out of fear of change? Could you imagine if nature did that? Could you imagine if a tree refused to drop its leaves for fear that they wouldn't come back again? Or maybe that things would never be the same? What if the plants were terrified to start sending out those little buds, those little shoots in the spring? Because they didn't know what might happen. So they resist that urge to grow to the point where they implode and die. I know it sounds ridiculous when we're talking about nature until we start to recognize those tendencies in ourselves. Or is it just me? Okay, thank you. I heard an emphatic no over there. Okay, good. Well, I got this kick out, something from Harold Wilson. He said, "He who rejects change is the architect of decay, the only human institution which rejects progress is the cemetery. Right? And then Ernest Holmes goes on to say, we are all living in a world of continual change, a world in which thought, thing, and experience are all in a constant state of flux. It is the very nature of the universe that there should be continual change and variation. It is a living world, the creation of a living, creative intelligence, not a static world created by a God now dead or departed who has left it to decay. Change is normal and natural, and we must change or decay. Or if that sounds too harsh, how about we must change or stagnate, which then leads to decay and death. Now, I wish I could tell you that I have this stuff all handled, that I embrace change with grace and ease, and the truth of the matter is, sometimes I do. I'm actually pretty good at this. I can be very flexible when it comes to everyday situations. Plans change, schedules change, oh yeah, but not a problem, not an issue. I even have consciously, as you know, made some pretty major life changes on purpose. Like picking up and moving to Canada at 56 years old. But what was happening for me was that I was living a potentially stagnant life in San Diego County, where the weather was all the same, right? And so I felt the need to shake things up. So I did that, but I did it consciously and on purpose. And the truth is, the growth that I have experienced has been very profound. It's been very life-changing. The changes have been remarkable that have taken place within me. I'm not the same person that I was when I arrived here. Because I moved myself out of my comfortable and familiar surroundings, I, like the tree, have had to grow stronger spiritual roots than ever before. It has not been always easy. I shared that with you a few weeks ago. But it has been deeply profound. And it has been essential to my growth and expansion, both as a minister and as a person and as a spiritual being in this human experience. I like this quote from George Lichtenberg, who wrote, "I cannot say whether things will get better if we change. What I can say is that they must change if they are to get better." Yeah. So as I said, sometimes I'm really good at embracing change, at initiating change, and sometimes I'm like a dog with a bone. And I don't realize that the whole time that I'm resisting whatever this change is, that the bone that I am clinging to with all of my might is gross and slimy and gnawed on and no longer has any value. There's nothing left on it, right? But by golly, I will defend that bone with everything I've got. Anybody else? Yeah. But here's the interesting thing about it. The change still happens. Even though I might be using my best efforts to keep things absolutely safe and absolutely still and together, the change still happens. Because it's normal. It's natural. It's the way of the world. It's the way of life. It's the way of the universe. So as Alan Watts put it, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it move with it, and join the dance. Yeah? Which sounds really good. Yes, Sunday morning. Yes, change. Yeah, yeah. Amen, sister. But the question is how? Especially if that change is supposedly happening to you, or despite your best efforts to keep it from happening. How do you plunge in? How do you move? And how do you join the dance when it isn't your choice to change? Well, the first thing to recognize, and I've been saying it all morning long, is that change is natural. It is normal. It's part of the universe moving and growing and expressing itself more fully. Do you understand what I mean by that? Change is the universe expanding and trying on new variations. And if we can really get that, then it takes the sting, a little bit of the sting, out of the change if it isn't our choice to change. Because when we understand that we are not victims of a capricious God who might be punishing us, but rather the evolution of spirit knowing itself and expressing itself more, it makes it maybe a little easier. And I know that there are some people who are going through some major life changes right now. Lots of losses going on, losses of a loved one, of a job, health, prosperity, way of life, a way of living. And I understand that when you're in that, it's nigh on impossible to see the good in the changes, particularly if you're right in the throes of it. This whole dancing with the change analogy sounds like a bunch of hooey if you're in the midst of it. It's too vague, right? It's too vague, it's too flowery, right? You want some real tools that can help you affect the change, to survive the change. Well, I just happen to have a few suggestions for surviving change. But can you guys hold on for a second while I put my fan on me? Yeah? Okay, talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, that's going to make a difference. Dwayne just had a heart attack, I'm telling you. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, so the first thing that you do, these tools for change, is if you were going to survive change, ask for help from others. Ask for support from people who care about you. To the best of your ability, don't isolate yourself. Any other isolators in the room? Any other wallowers in the room? Yeah. So often when we're experiencing something unsettling, the first thing that we want to do is withdraw. Because, I don't want to burden people with my problems, and besides which they might not let me wallow in it for a little bit. But here's the challenge, and that's actually key. The challenge is if we only keep company with ourselves, then we only have our own skewed perspective on something when we're in the middle of it. That makes sense? You know what I'm talking about? So we need to reach out to people when we're going through the change. We need to reach out, let people know what's going on. Here's a novel idea. Call a practitioner. Get in touch with your ministers. Let them do spiritual mind treatment for you. Everybody go like this. Yeah. The next one is don't busy yourself so much by doing stuff all of the time. You know what I'm talking about? Because the real learning and the wisdom comes not only from gathering with people, but it's also with allowing yourself to be with yourself, your higher self, not your self, your higher self. So reach out to people for a bit of support, but don't be so busy doing that you're not being. Yes? We are not humans doing, we are humans being. Because only by being with the change will it eventually settle down and become okay. Here's the next one, and there's some controversy about this next one. And that is, be curious about the lessons to be learned. I have many colleagues who say we don't come here to learn lessons. I personally think we do, which is why this was important to me, because there's always something to be learned, right? If we didn't learn from these situations, well then, we would be hooped, right? Come on, that was a little bit funny. In other words, when we change our perspective, that's going to transform our relationship with the experience. Because if we believe that we live in a friendly universe, and I believe that we live in a friendly universe, that even though the change may be something that's unsettling, we know eventually that it is for us. We may not be able to see it yet, but we know and we trust that there is a purpose for this. There is a lesson here for us. Something in the situation is there for our greater good. So even if we don't believe it yet, even if we don't see it yet, just remaining open to the possibility of the lesson and trust that it's coming. The next one, this one is hard. Are you ready? You ready for this? Don't place blame. Don't fall into victimhood. Oh, poor me. I get it. Oh, I can't tell you how many oh, poor me's I go through. But that negative energy can be turned around to propel, to be fuel, to propel us forward. Because by seeing ourselves as victims, we are handing over our power to someone else. And it's usually the person that we sure as heck do not want to hand our power over to, right? Right. So instead of holding on to resentment like we talked about a few weeks ago, turn that feeling, turn it around, and turn it into the very juice that's going to make you stronger and more powerful and more positive. And the next one's hard too. Are you ready? Then they get easier, all right? Ready? Take a deep breath. This one is tough. Take responsibility. I know. You have responsibility for your actions, for your words, for your behavior. Remembering that nobody is doing anything to you in spite of appearances to the opposite. Because the law of attraction teaches us that if it is in our lives, we have somehow attracted it, or we have somehow made it welcome. And I know you're like, I did not invite this in. I am not making this. Well, you know what? If it's in your life, you did. Here's what Ernest Holmes had to say about it. You are either attracting or repelling according to your mental attitudes. You cannot keep from attracting into your experience that which corresponds to the sum total of your states of consciousness. The law of attraction and repulsion works automatically. Now see, this is key. I could do a whole talk on this quote right here, because what he's talking about is the sum total of your states of consciousness. We don't know everything that's lurking in our subconscious minds, right? That could be the attracting thing. We're like, oh, kumbaya, well, everything's wonderful, la la la. But deep down, we may think that the world sucks. And so that's how it shows up to us. So we keep putting the positive stuff in so that that stuff that's lurking no longer has precedence, but it still has power. Yes? You with me? Okay, so when we take responsibility for somehow attracting these unexpected changes in our lives, we are no longer victims of life, of circumstances, of other people. So now it gets better. Because the next one is take special care of yourself. Yay! Get lots of rest. Nourish your body with healthy food. Get massages. Ramp up your spiritual practice in order to tame your monkey mind that wreaks havoc. Did I mention we have a meditation class starting? Starts Tuesday. Here's another one. I thought this one was very interesting, and this is don't put a time limit on yourself in order to adjust to the change. Because this kind of pressure, when we put a time limit, it's unrealistic and it's not helpful. I've known people who have said, I should be over this by now. Or they've said, I told myself that by such and such a date I'll be healed. And I think that we do that because in our society we're told to set goals. And goals are really good, but healing doesn't respond to goals necessarily. Especially doesn't respond to arbitrary timelines. Healing takes the time it takes. So be kind to yourself. And one of the ways you can be kind to yourself is spend time with nature. Yeah, walk barefoot in the grass, in the sand. Breathe in the fresh air. Go to those mountains. Those mountains. Hug a tree. Yeah. It'll bring you peace. It'll bring you perspective. And it will also ground you into the natural healing of the earth. And then the last one to remember on this is know that this too shall pass. Why? Because change is constant. It is natural and it is normal. And when you know that even in the midst of it, that this came to pass. You know, we hear in biblical terms, it came to pass. But if you turn that around, it came to pass. It came to pass. So when we know that, and we know that it's ultimately for our greater good in spite of appearances, then we can trust that it's not forever. It came to pass. So the reason that I chose to talk about change today is because we're looking at making an exciting change here at the center. There's a reason we're having this special meeting right after service. So I think what needs to happen with this, folks, is that we need to clear out of here so we can get set up for the meeting. And if you are a member, you need to pick up your voting ballot and or sign your proxy so that we have that, so that everybody's represented with this. And this is a really cool thing. I want you to know that this is a really cool thing, but we want to let you know all about it. So if you're curious about it, if you're curious what's going on, then be here. You're free to join us, but yeah, everybody's welcome here, but only people who are registered voters are going to be asked to vote on this, okay? So in the meantime, try not to fear the winds of change. Like a Chinook, they may bring you a headache, but they are ultimately for our greater good. Thank you, and so it is.